He's ever so grateful the nurse had told him how lucky he was. He was literally a couple millimeters away from dying that night. Ex-homeless redditors, what was the scariest thing that you ever saw on the streets? I was homeless back when I was 19. After a few weeks of sleeping rough, I was approached one evening by a man dressed as a priest. At this point I had no idea if he was a priest or someone out to deceive me. Being wary of the priest outfit, I straight away told him I have no interest in talking about God. What he said next has stuck with me ever since. I am not here to talk about God. I'm here to make sure you are safe. We talked for quite a while until it was dark, and that's when he offered me a bed for the night. Alarm bells were going off in my head, but he had seemed genuine, so I went with him. He drove me to a house in the suburbs and asked me to wait in his car whilst he spoke to someone. A few minutes later he returned with another man who offered to let me sleep in his garage for the night. Everything inside me was saying this is a bad idea, but I accepted as I had nothing left to lose. The garage was pretty standard: tools, workbench, etc., except in the corner there was a box spring and some blankets. There was a connecting door to the main house that the man told me he would have to keep locked during the night. He apologized but said he had kids in the house and couldn't take the risk. The priest asked if he could come by in the morning and speak to me, then went into the house of the man. I don't think I slept at all that night. I was terrified. I had no reason to be afraid of either man, as they had been nothing but nice to me. However, after living on the streets for a while, you come to learn that nothing comes for free and you shouldn't trust anyone. The morning rolled around and the most amazing thing happened. The man knocked on his own garage door to ask me if he could come in. This might not sound amazing, but when you've been living rough with zero privacy, someone asking if they can enter your space, which is actually his space, gives you a sense of being human again. Someone actually respects you enough to ask your permission. I spoke with both him and the priest every day for the 7 weeks I slept in his garage. Between them they managed to get me into a subsidized efficiency apartment, think studio apartment but a lot smaller, got me a job and helped me get my life back on track. That was over 20 years ago, and I will also be indebted to both of them. I still sent Christmas cards to the man whose garage was my home and visited him 2 years ago for Thanksgiving. Sadly, the priest passed away a few years back, but I guarantee that if there is a heaven, he got fast-tracked in. Cold weather. I thought I was going to die one night. I was so cold. I remember waking up thinking you need to move or you are going to die. This was the scariest thing for me. I ended up sleeping in buses, burning sterno. It's like jellied rubbing alcohol that burns for a good while. I would try to constantly be walking, cause if I stopped I'd probably fall asleep and die. I also sometimes rested under a bridge from time to time. One time I fell asleep under the bridge and I woke up finally feeling warm and cozy and thought it was nice to finally be able to rest. Then I realized that it's way too cold for this and I can't move without that frozen fingers, pain everywhere. Struggled real hard to get my sterno out and could barely bend my fingers enough to light it. Like my hands were nearly useless. I'm really glad I woke up. There is a drainage ditch in my area that the local homeless people tend to bed down in. A few years ago, when I found myself destitute, I spent one night down there. That night I witnessed a Molotov get thrown into another dude's spot, which led to a huge fire that ran rampant through the area. Yeah, I bought a tent the next day and started camping in the local mountains. I was just sleeping around where other guys in my city sleep, then just saw some teens stabbing one of the homeless guys multiple times, ran away from there, never turned back. My buddy is a public defender. Only for 10 years until the state pays his loans. The stories he tells will never stop surprising you. Every time we eat dinner together I always have to be reminded to close my mouth because my jaw is always on the table in disbelief of how fucked up society is out there. Bottom line, get a public defender in your circle of friends. Your dinner parties will never be lame again. I was staying in a homeless shelter that had a men's side and a woman's side. Most of the men were convicted sex offenders. In the 8 months I spent in that hell on earth, I was friends with 3 women who were raped by some of these men. The truly scary thing? The women were actively discouraged from telling anyone what had happened, especially the police. If they filed a report with the police, they were permanently barred from the shelter. That place, one of the most celebrated in my state, regularly has the mayor and governor drop by, is the most evil place on earth. Pretty much this. I went to college with a guy who was homeless, and he said the amount of women who get raped is just staggering. The police don't care and the women just have to live with it because there is nothing they can do. He said it was worse with younger girls. Sometimes they would get picked up and would never be seen again. He didn't know if they were killed or just moved off the streets with someone. Waking up to a shotgun being pointed directly at my head. I wasn't truly homeless but had no money or bank card and was trying to get back to my parents following nearly being strangled to death by my ex. The actual fight happened whilst we were out, so I had no spare clothes. I'd left my wallet at his, and only had a dying phone on me. I tried getting money for a train but only really managed enough for a bus fare to the next town and decided to try hitchhiking. Late into the night I gave up and managed to sneak into a barn where I was able to get comfortable enough to sleep. Turns out I didn't close the door enough and the farmer found me in the morning after taking his gun to investigate. He woke me up, I think he coughed loudly, with the gun pointed at me, and I nearly shat myself. He asked me what I thought I was doing in his barn, and quizzed me on how I got in. He asked to see my arms before he lowered the gun and he started chatting. He was quite nice though, and after talking to him for a while he took me back to his house and fed me and let me have a shower. Lots of stabbings and rapes. I was stalked by a gang one night on my way home from work. I still have no idea how I wasn't raped or mugged. Once I woke up suddenly to a not homeless man holding a huge knife staring at me inside the abandoned building's basement I was sleeping in. Once he noticed I was awake, he asked if I was Russian. I said no and he said he was looking for a different girl, gave me $20 and left. I had been homeless for a couple weeks now and had made friends with this couple. They seemed pretty chill but had a bit of a drinking problem. Anyway, one night I was sleeping, could hear some commotion going on, couldn't make out who it was or what was going on. Until my buddy comes and sits on my sleeping bag, blood pumping out of his neck, like full on every time his heart beats. It would splurt out, not under huge pressure but it was pretty bad. I asked him what happened and he said he thought his missus had cut his throat with a Stanley blade. He was so drunk he was not aware of how bad his injury was, and insisted I did not call an ambulance. So I called the police and they called the ambulance. I see the dude a couple days later, still homeless, scar on his neck. He's ever so grateful the nurse had told him how lucky he was. He was literally a couple millimeters away from dying that night. Edit, I'm no longer homeless, this all happened about 6 years ago now. I no longer speak to him, this is another long story. She was arrested but not charged. Last year she committed suicide, so she's no longer with us. I'm a woman in my early 20s. Not my brightest decision, but I slept in my car for several weeks, when I was completely out of money. Every night I parked in a small cul-de-sac. As far as I knew, the area was office only, so I didn't take anybody's parking lot and in the morning I left. I worked a lot, so usually I slept like a log. One night though I woke up, feeling anxious for some reason. I looked up and saw a softly illuminated window right above me. Nice, warm light as if from a grandma bedside lamp. I freaked out a bit and fumbled for my keys. I better sit the rest of the night out at McDonald's or something. Then I noticed a silhouette not far away. A man was standing still and watching me. He didn't knock on my window glass, didn't try to talk or anything. He was just watching. I booked it out of that cul-de-sac real quick. You know, the thing that freaks me out the most is not even the fact that he could assault or rob me then, but the realization that he may have watched me every other night, but I was too tired to notice that earlier. Like and subscribe for more r/ask Reddit videos.